I hope everybody had a great and terrific Thanksgiving weekend. We are right back here to kick off the new week with more Philadelphia Phillies offseason talk. Welcome to Phillies Daily, everybody. I'm your host, Mike Hennelly. Make sure you guys subscribe for more Phillies content right here on Phillies Daily. You guys are much appreciated, as always. With it being Thanksgiving time, with it being the holidays, I am so super grateful for each and every single one of you for joining in here, tuning in, watching, giving me your thoughts, your opinions, your hot takes, everything, disagreeing with me. I love it all. That's what sports are all about, and that's what having a platform like this is all about as well. Now, diving right into some Phillies offseason talk, specifically the Phillies free agents. Now, we all know the big free agents, Ranger Suarez, Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, Harrison Bader as well. You could put in there as well are some of those top guys that the Phillies are trying to decide whether to re-sign, let walk, and bring in some new faces potentially if they do so. Now, a lot of people thought Ranger Suarez, the Phillies left-hander in the starting rotation, was kind of the odd man out and the guy they're really probably not going to be able to get back if they want to try to keep around Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, maybe even Harrison Bader, just because the starting pitching, they have so much commitment there. I'll get to that in a little moment here, just a few minutes away. But first, Ranger Suarez. It was interesting enough, ESPN had a piece polling, surveying, asking 16 MLB executives about certain offseason outcomes, scenarios with free agency trades, what's going around the league here. And one of the questions or one of the topics was Ranger Suarez, and they had predicted Ranger Suarez's landing spot. Now, interestingly enough, Ranger Suarez was returning to the Phillies was tied for the most popular answer, the most popular pick in that poll of those 16 MLB execs. Now, actually 14, I believe, actually voted on that regarding Ranger Suarez. They didn't all have to vote on certain things, so only 14 of the 16 did. The four of those 14, I should say, MLB execs predicted Ranger Suarez to re-sign with the Phillies. Now, that was tied for the most votes for a team that he could potentially sign with, tied with the Boston Red Sox for the most votes. Now, if you know, Boston traded for Garrett Crochet last year, starting pitcher, and then they just traded for Sonny Gray as well from the St. Louis Cardinals. So they are making moves in the rotation. Maybe they're done making big moves like that and potentially signing Ranger Suarez to a pretty hefty kind of deal that he's likely to get in free agency with some team. Now, the Blue Jays also, they had the next most votes with 3, the Atlanta Braves 2, San Francisco Giants with 1. Now, the Blue Jays are probably out of it. If you saw, they signed former San Diego Padres starter Dylan Cease to a 7-year massive contract just last week, I believe it was. So really, that kind of takes them out of the question. Maybe the Red Sox are out of the question. So that kind of leaves the Phillies as that top team, and maybe a reunion with Ranger Suarez that a lot of people, including myself, didn't believe to be a possibility this offseason heading into the new season. In fact, one of the execs that were polled in this little survey by ESPN said, quote, about Ranger Suarez returning to the Phillies this offseason, with Zach Wheeler out, I think Suarez goes back to Philadelphia, one exec said. It's kind of like Kyle Schwarber. They need him more than he needs them. Now, Zach Wheeler, we all know he was out for the rest of the season, the playoffs, with that syndrome, with that diagnosis. He's looking to get better, and a lot of reports have been saying that he could potentially be ready for opening day. So maybe that's not a huge need there for bringing back Ranger Suarez, unless Zach Wheeler has a setback or he's just not the same Zach Wheeler that he was pre-injury. That gets me into Ranger Suarez being the odd man out in this Phillies starting rotation, and why I've been saying all offseason and why I still truly believe bringing back Ranger Suarez just doesn't make sense for the Phillies this offseason. It's hard to imagine them paying and bringing back Ranger Suarez. For starters, Ranger Suarez hired super agent Scott Boras before the 2025 season, knowing that he was on a contract year, knowing that he is going to be looking for a massive contract. If you know baseball, you know Scott Boras represents so many of these top talents in Major League Baseball. He works for the biggest contracts he can possibly get. He's known to be signing some of the most richest contracts in Major League Baseball history to his clients, and Ranger Suarez is up for a big payday here in free agency. So that's one factor why I believe that he's kind of just out of the Phillies price range this offseason. Also, just for the fact that he's been such a good piece for the Phillies over these last few years, both in the bullpen when they need him, and obviously as a starter. Ranger Suarez, still 30 years old too, so not too old. He's still got some good years left in him as well, and he's a left-hander. A lot of teams obviously always looking for left-handed pitching, so just added that. That just it just doesn't make sense, in my opinion, to pay him. Now, again, the reason he's the odd man out is because I said earlier in this video that the Phillies do have a lot of invested into this starting rotation. Zack Wheeler, first and foremost, he has 2 more years left on that extension he signed recently. $42 million he'll be making in 2026 and 2027 before that contract is up. So that is a lot of money for the next 2 years for Zack Wheeler. Obviously, we all know the Phillies extended Aaron Nola as well the other year on that massive 7-year, $172 million $72 million contract. He still has 5 more years left on that deal, so they're tied to Aaron Nola for a lot of years and a lot of money there as well. Christopher Sanchez, he was signed to an extension in 2024 during that season, so he's under club control for another 3 years. He also has club options for the 2029 and 2030 season, so he's here for a while. Those are 3 of your 5 starters right there, and obviously 3 of the 5 starters that should be in the starting rotation, regardless of what happens, who they have, what is the other options there for them to choose from. Then you have Jesus Luzardo, who the Phillies traded for with the Miami Marlins before the 2025 season. He is under contract just for this year in 2026 before he's eligible to be a free agent for the first time in his career in the heading into the 2027 season. So they'll have a decision whether to re-sign Jesus Luzardo or not. And he's 2 years younger than Ranger Suarez is. They're both obviously left-handed pitchers. They both kind of can be streaky at times. We saw that with Ranger Suarez over the last 2 years. We saw that with Jesus Luzardo after the dominant start he had to his Phillies career in 2025. Struggled in the middle months and then picked it up towards the end of the season and obviously into the playoffs as well for the Phillies. So 2 years younger, both lefties. You can't really keep both of them, especially with the other commitment you have with Zack Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Christopher Sanchez. Then obviously you have the top pitching prospect, one of the top prospects in all of Major League Baseball, Andrew Painter. He's set to join the Phillies starting rotation here in 2026, barring any setbacks here this offseason and heading into spring training and all of that. So right there with Luzardo, that's 5 of your starters right there between Zack Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Christopher Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo, Andrew Painter. Phillies don't want to run a 6-man rotation all year long. It's good for some points of the season, but just it doesn't make sense for an MLB team to do that all season long for the most part. So Ranger Suarez, unfortunately, the odd man out with him being a free agent. And then obviously you also have Taijuan Walker on that final year of his contract he signed a few years ago, set to make $18 million if the Phillies aren't unable to get rid of him in some way or sort here this offseason. So really, again, just no room for Ranger Suarez, who could be in for a big payday, especially seeing what Dylan Cease just got from the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, interestingly enough as well, speaking about the Phillies free agents, Ranger Suarez, Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, very interesting to see the teams that are interested in these Phillies free agents. And the most interesting team, in my opinion, a lot of people have been talking about as well, is the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are expected to be spending big money this offseason, or at least trying to. They were in on Josh Naylor before he re-signed with the Seattle Mariners. And then reports came out a week or 2 ago saying among the teams that are interested in Kyle Schwarber and pursuing him in free agency, with the Phillies being one of them, obviously, the Pirates being a team aggressively pursuing Kyle Schwarber, trying to get a superstar talent there in Pittsburgh to try to pair with Paul Skeens, the Cy Young, the Rookie of the Year in 2024 as well in the National League, and some other pieces they have there as well. And now, MLB Network insider John Heyman, he posted a piece on the New York Post the other day saying that the Pittsburgh Pirates, among being interested in Kyle Schwarber, are also interested in Phillies catcher, possibly former catcher, JT Realmuto. So there's interest with Schwarber, there's interest for Realmuto there with the Pirates. Can't really see them going after JT Realmuto with him being on the back end of his career. He's going to be 35 in March. He's getting older. He's declining. He'll probably have his eyes set on a team where he can win a World Series here in 2026 or to close out his career possibly in 2027. I don't think the Pirates are that team. And the reason that I say the Pirates are kind of funny to bring up, trying to spend this big money, trying to go after these big names in free agency, is because they're not really known over the years to be able to get signed and being going after these big free agents in free agency or making huge trades to bring in players. Just not the same market that Philadelphia is and some other teams like Los Angeles, New York, all these teams. The Pirates just don't really have the attraction, don't really have the money to bring in these guys unless it's homegrown talent. like Paul Skeens. But we saw back in the day when Garrett Cole, similar situation, a star starting pitcher, one of the best younger guys at the time coming up, they were unable to keep him, and then he went on to move on to other teams. Maybe that happens with Paul Skeens, or maybe they're trying to make a shift here, get the talent in to keep Paul Skeens there long term. Who knows what happens, but just very interesting about the other Pennsylvania team here being interested in the Phillies free agents. Speaking of teams in the area, also MLB.com talking about the Phillies potentially moving on from JT Realmuto and bringing in a new catcher. That is a three-way trade of MLB.com's Anthony Castrovince. I don't know how to say his last name, but that's who he is. He listed a ridiculous trade, three-way trade involving the Philadelphia Phillies, the Baltimore Orioles, and the Washington Nationals. Now, it was a piece I think it was 7 different trades that he said ridiculous trades he'd like to see. This three-way trade between the Phillies, Orioles, and Nationals, obviously all connected by I-95 here on the East Coast. Phillies would get Baltimore Orioles star catcher Adley Rutschman. The Orioles would get left-handed pitcher Mackenzie Gore and catcher Keibert Ruiz from the Washington Nationals. And then the Washington Nationals will kind of get the leftovers and obviously the younger prospects for these guys. They would get Nick Castellanos, so that's the contract the Phillies would be able to get rid of that they're trying to. Aiden Miller, the Phillies' number 2 prospect, the young infielder, as well as another young infielder in the Phillies organization, third baseman Carson DeMartini. He's the Phillies' number 13 prospect per MLB Pipeline. And then they would also get Baltimore Orioles' number 10 catching prospect, Caden Bodine. Now, is it really worth giving up Aiden Miller, who's just 21 years old, and DeMartini, who's going to be 23 this month here in December, with today being December 1st, for Adley Rutschman, and obviously parting with Nick Castellanos, who I'm sure a lot of people, including myself, wouldn't really care too much to get rid of. Obviously, the Phillies are trying to trade him or release him this offseason just to get one player, and that being catcher Adley Rutschman from the Orioles. Now, Rutschman, I made a video about the possibility of the Phillies trading for him before. You can go check out here on the channel at Phillies Daily if you'd like to do so. Adley Rutschman is still just 27 years old. He's a switch hitter, so he can bat from the left side. He can bat from the right side. Catcher, obviously. 2019 first overall pick in that draft. He was the 2022 American League Rookie of the Year runner-up. He was 12th in American League MVP voting that year as a rookie in 2022. He was an All-Star, a Silver Slugger, and 9th in American League MVP voting the following year in 2023. He was an All-Star in 2024 as well with the Orioles. Had a down year in 2025 this past year, as did the Baltimore Orioles as a team as a whole. Just not the year they would liked out of them, or Adley Rutschman would have liked out of himself. He batted just .220 with 9 home runs and 29 RBIs in 2025. Now, he only played in 90 games due to multiple oblique injuries, both on his left and his right side. But he does still have 2 more years of club control before he's a free agent in 2028. So there's that. If the Phillies were to acquire Adley Rutschman in a trade with the Orioles, potentially this 3-way trade between the I-95 teams here with the Orioles, Nationals, and Phillies, kind of gives me the vibes, if they were to trade for a guy like Adley Rutschman, of trading for JT Realmuto back before the 2019 season from the Miami Marlins. He was a younger guy, not a younger guy, but a guy entering his prime years, kind of. Had some success there with the Marlins, and then came to the Phillies and really developed into probably the best all-around catcher here for years and years and years, until obviously he's gotten older now the past couple of years, kind of declining both offensively and defensively, but still a very solid option. Could, as a 27-year-old Adley Rutschman, could bring those same vibes for the Phillies, and they could have their new catcher of the future as they had JT Realmuto for those last few years here with the Phillies, and hopefully keep that championship window open, give them a catcher, because obviously we all know not much in the organization at the catching position if JT Realmuto is not the guy in 2026. They have Rafael Marchand, who's still just 26 years old, but hasn't really had the chance to prove himself as an everyday catcher at the major league level. Garrett Stubbs, a veteran, can't do anything offensively, and then don't really have anything immediately coming up in the minor leagues either. So trading for a guy like Adley Rutschman could fix a lot of issues. Obviously had a down year in 2025, but so did the Orioles as a whole. Battled through injuries, had a ton of success his first 3 years in Major League Baseball with the Orioles, so it could be a good trade. Probably not going to happen. That's why it was a ridiculous trade that he posted hypothetically on MLB.com in that piece, but something very interesting at that. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Phillies Daily. I'm your host, Mike Kennelly. Make sure you guys like, comment, share, and subscribe for more Phillies content right here on Phillies Daily. Interesting offseason, fun offseason, exciting offseason. Stay tuned with us here. I'll be breaking down everything as I always do and talking about rumors, different thoughts, how people could potentially fit here with the Phillies. So stay tuned, and as always, go Phils.